Good day, my friends. Welcome to another exciting episode of the Daily Torah broadcast, a ministry of the Messianic Discipleship Institute. Remember, you can always visit us online at mymdi.org and download previous episodes of the Daily Torah podcast. If you're not a Daily Torah channel subscriber, click the subscribe button so you never miss a single episode. Today we are on day 6 of this week's Daily Torah series called Re'eh. Yesterday we discussed Moses giving God's instructions on tithing principles. Today our Torah portion continues with Moses giving God's instructions on debts being canceled every 7 years. If you have your Bibles and notepads handy, get them ready or listen and review later. But let's pick up the story in Deuteronomy chapter 15, beginning in verse 1. In Deuteronomy chapter 15, verse 1, we read, "At the end of every 7 years, you shall grant a release of debts, and this is the form of the release. Every creditor who has lent anything to his neighbor shall release it. He shall not require it of his neighbor or his brother, because it is called the Lord's release. Of a foreigner you may require it, but you shall give up your claim to what is owed by your brother, except when there may be no poor among you, for the Lord will greatly bless you in the land which the Lord your God is giving you to possess as an inheritance. Only if you carefully obey the voice of the Lord your God, to observe with care all these commandments which I command you today. For the Lord your God will bless you, just as he promised you. You shall lend to many nations, but you shall not borrow. You shall reign over many nations, but they shall not reign over you." Now, my friends, Moses commands the Israelite creditors to grant a remission of debts to fellow Israelites in the Sabbath year. This passage follows the theme from the previous chapter in Deuteronomy 14, where provisions were made to protect vulnerable members of Israel's society, including the Levites, aliens, orphans, and widows. In ancient Israel, there were no government welfare programs like we have today. Instead, they had a kind of workfare system. The idea was that people who had lost their land could take the initiative to provide for themselves. Those who were economically stable would help those in need. The system reflected the covenant framework. Israel was to be a self-governing people who loved their neighbors as themselves, in stark contrast to surrounding pagan cultures that exploited the helpless. And here's how it worked. Every 7th year, debts were canceled. If you lent money to a fellow Israelite, you couldn't collect it during that year. This ensured that no one would be thrown into perpetual poverty due to unpaid debts. The phrase "at the end of every 7 years" refers to a 7-year cycle, not necessarily starting from the day the loan was given. It was a universal time designated as the year of remission. The word for remission in Hebrew is shemitah, meaning releasing a debtor from the obligation to pay back debts. Lenders were no longer allowed to demand repayment. You may hear that there's a shemitah cycle. It's every 7 years, and at the end of that is the year of release. Interesting, this release didn't apply to foreigners living in Israel. They could still be required to pay debts during the sabbatical year, the Shemitah year. The goal was to ensure that there would be no permanent underclass in Israel. God's promise was that if they obeyed, they'd be blessed and lend to many nations without borrowing. So in a way, this ancient economic system was like a reset button, preventing perpetual debt and ensuring a more equitable society. Quite a remarkable approach to our ever-expanding debt problems we have in the world today. Now, continuing in verse 7. "If there is among you a poor man of your brethren, within any of the gates in your land, which the Lord your God is giving you. You shall not harden your heart, nor shut your hand from your poor brother, but you shall open your hand wide to him and willingly lend him sufficiency for his need, because he needs whatever he needs. Beware lest there be a wicked thought in your heart, saying, the 7th year, the year of release, is at hand, and your eye be evil against your poor brother, and you give him nothing, and he cry out to the Lord against you, and it becomes sin among you. In verse 10, you shall surely give to him, and your heart should not be grieved when you give to him, because for this thing the Lord your God will bless you in all your works and in all to which you put your hand. For the poor will never cease from the land. Therefore I command you, saying, you shall open your hand wide to your brother, to your poor, and your needy in your land. Now, my friends, Deuteronomy 15 verses 7 through 11 offers a powerful message about generosity and compassion. Moses addresses the Israelites, emphasizing the responsibility toward their needy brothers within the promised land. The focus is on fellow Israelites, not non-Israelites. Moses urges creditors not to harden their hearts or withhold assistance, especially when the year of remission, when debts were extinguished, is near. Instead, they should freely lend to those in need, even if repayment seems unlikely. The goal isn't to create a permanent poor class. These provisions aim to provide a path out of poverty. Lenders are encouraged to open their hands generously, helping their brethren. Moses emphasizes that God will bless those who give freely and generously. Our work becomes fully blessed when it blesses others. So generosity isn't just about money. It's also about how we treat one another in our daily interactions. Yeshua echoed these words when he told the disciples in Matthew 26, verse 11. He says, for you have the poor with you always, but me you do not have always, speaking before his crucifixion. So my friends, let's open wide our hand to our brethren who are in need. Let's lend a helping hand in supporting someone who needs help right now. Don't close up your heart, but open it wide so that the Lord will bless you, because the Lord loves a cheerful giver. Generosity enriches both the giver and the receiver. Now let's look at our half Torah portion for today in Isaiah chapter 55, and we'll read verses 3 and 4. In Isaiah 55, verse 3, incline your ear and come to me. Hear, and you shall live, and I will make an everlasting covenant with you, the sure mercies of David. Indeed, I have given him as a witness to the people, a leader and commander for the people. Now, my friends, this is an invitation from God urging us to pay attention, lean in, and draw near. It's like a cosmic whisper saying, hey, listen up. I got something important to share. The act of listening isn't passive. It's life-giving. When we truly hear God's words, they breathe life into our souls. It's not just about physical existence. It's about abundant, meaningful life. God promises an unbreakable, eternal agreement. Think of it as a divine contract, signed in love and sealed with grace. This covenant isn't fleeting, it's forever. Here's where it gets interesting, my friends. God refers to the mercies he extended to David, the shepherd boy turned king. But this promise goes beyond David. It points to the Messiah, the ultimate son of David, Yeshua HaMashiach. The sure mercies are fulfilled in him. Now, let's look at Isaiah 54, verse 4. Isaiah 55 verse 4, he says, "Behold, I have given him a witness to the people, a leader and commander for the peoples." This verse unveils the Messiah's role. God appointed the Messiah, Yeshua, as a witness. He testifies to God's truth, love, and salvation. Imagine Yeshua standing in the cosmic courtroom saying, "I've seen it all, and here's the good news." And he's just not appointed as just any leader. He's a sovereign one. Yeshua isn't merely a guide. He's the commander-in-chief of our souls. His laws aren't burdensome. There's no burden in keeping his commands and keeping the Torah. They're liberating. His leadership isn't oppressive. It's redemptive. My friends, these words echo throughout time, inviting us to lean in, to listen, and find life in the everlasting covenant. Now let's review our Brit Hadashah portion for today in 1 John chapter 4, and we'll read verses 1 through 3. In 1 John chapter 4, verse 1, we read, "Beloved, don't believe every spirit, but test the spirits, whether they are of God, because many false prophets have gone out into the world. But this you know, the Spirit of God. Every spirit who confesses that Yeshua the Messiah has come in the flesh is of God. And every spirit who doesn't confess that Yeshua the Messiah has come in the flesh is not of God. And this is the spirit of the anti-Messiah, of whom you have heard that it comes. Now it is in the world already." Now, my friends, this is a fascinating passage that addresses spiritual discernment in the nature of Yeshua. Here are 3 insights. Number 1, testing the spirits. John encourages discernment. Not every spiritual claim aligns with God's truth. We must evaluate them carefully. False prophets abound, so we need to be vigilant. Point number 2, the confession of Yeshua. The litmus test is whether a spirit acknowledges Yeshua's incarnation. If it does, it's from God. If not, it's not of God. This underscores the centrality of Yeshua's humanity and divinity. And then point number 3, the anti-Messiah spirit. John introduces the concept of the anti-Messiah, also known as the Antichrist. It's not just a future figure, it's already at work. And we see it all around us, don't we, my friends? Any spirit denying Yeshua's true nature opposes God. And my friends, I believe that the anti-Messiah is alive today among us. We are very close to that final 7-year period in the book of Revelation, in the book of Daniel, and we know that where humanity is going to finally recognize and take the mark of the anti-Messiah, the mark of the beast. We know it's coming. It's coming very quickly, and I believe it's at our very door. If you haven't listened to our series, God's Plan for Humanity and how it all plays out, please take some time to go through this series. I think you'll find it very enlightening to you. So my friends, let's end it here for today. Take some time to meditate on these words and how they apply to your life. Pray for us in this message to go out, and pray for those who are scattered throughout the world seeking their Messiah so that they will return to the Torah and their Hebraic roots. Share this message with your friends and family. Post a link on your social media pages and help us spread the gospel. You never know whose life you may affect. Remember to visit us at mymdi.org. Take one of our free classes, download the Daily Torah schedule. You can also order some of our books there. And if the Lord inspires you, please consider becoming a monthly sponsor so we can reach more people with these messages. Just click the giving menu option or the donate button on the website. Tomorrow, we will continue our series. Until then, Shalom Aleichem, blessings and shalom, my friends.